And we're back, and joining us live is Paul. And before we went to break, I was asking Paul a question about what is the demographic makeup of most of the violence that tends to happen in the UK?
Well, it's a reflection of exactly the same that happens in the US. To be perfectly honest, it tends to be lower socioeconomic background. It tends to be young men between about 15 years old and 30 years old. They tend to be are disenfranchised with their life. They feel they're not making it, as it were, and so they look to other avenues in order to make money or to get respect or to be included in a gang or whatever. Really, it's that straightforward. It tends to be from the inner towns. You don't tend to see it so much in the countryside. It tends to be the people who don't have jobs and have not necessarily through their own problems, but they've come out of the educational establishments without the qualifications that they need in order to make it legitimate. So they look to other avenues, and this could be a gang based on cultural lines. So you get like Russian gangs and Turkish gangs and Chinese gangs and Pakistani gangs and Afro-Caribbean gangs and English gangs and French gangs. Or it could just be, they're just young men that just want to be part of, we call them postcode gangs, so like zip code gangs. And it's just, this is their turf.
Now, how do they go about getting their guns? Like, is getting a gun in UK an easy process? Getting a gun illegally, is that an easy process? Or, I mean, because they make it seem like you pretty much have to know magic.
It is a fairly straightforward process, and the analogy I would use would be, it's like if I want to buy some cocaine. Now, if you asked me to go and buy some cocaine, I wouldn't know where to go. I don't know any of the people out there, but if I needed to get a firearm, I'd be able to. Now, what you have to understand is there is fairly easy travel throughout the EU, the European Union. You don't need to have a passport if you're a member state. So lots of firearms are just brought in cars across the channel, and they're just brought in. And sometimes it's done innocently, because if you come from like the Czech Republic, for example, I met a couple of guys, and they didn't know they couldn't bring their pistols because they were like, well, why not? It's my gun. And it's like, well, this is England. We don't do that. They're like, yeah. So honestly, you can't. So you have to take them. You have to take the guns off them and say, you can't do that. That's very naughty. But sometimes they do it on purpose. And I'm not talking about, I mean, I have personally seen Mac 10s, AK-47s, Uzis.
And we're talking fully automatic. We're not even talking semi-automatic.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to the scene of drive-bys. Okay, the good thing is they don't practice very much with them because they don't have the gun ranges that we have in America. So they tend to be quite bad. So I did a drive-by. I didn't do a drive-by. I went to a drive-by.
Right.
And basically the first 2 rounds went at the party, and then the other 28 just sprayed up the wall of the house. And you could count. I mean, you could see where they went up the wall. So they tend to be fairly bad shots, so they don't get to practice too much.
But nonetheless, you guys are seeing drive-bys with fully automatic weapons there.
Nonetheless, we've got fully automatic weapons, military-grade hardware that is being used on the streets of the UK. Not every day, very often, but it does happen.
Gotcha. And I honestly can't remember the last time I remember hearing about a fully automatic weapon being used here in America. I'm pretty sure somebody will correct me if that is the case. The cases I know of, everybody knows about those. They were pretty popular. So with that being said, so most of the people, if I understood you correctly, most of the criminals that are getting their firearms, they're either bringing them over, or is there like black market in terms of buying certain guns? Or
yeah, absolutely. There are various people that have like a cache of firearms. You can rent them from these people.
You can rent a gun.
Yeah, you can rent a gun if you want to. Say you want to do an armed robbery. You go to the guy that rents a gun, and he'll rent you a gun for say $1,000 or £1,000, obviously.
Yeah.
And then you go away, you do the robbery. There's no problems. You give the gun back, and he'll give you 800 back. So you rent it for 200. But if you use it, so if you shoot it, then the gun's yours. But you've already paid for it. So
gotcha. Wow. Okay. So that's interesting. So essentially, but there's a gun registry. They have registration in the UK, right?
Yes, they do.
That
Yes.
should stop that. That should not be able to happen as fluidly as it does, or am I being naive?
Well, I don't think you are being naive, sir, because I think you know better. But that only works for legally held firearms.
Okay.
So obviously, all the people that play by the rules, all their firearms are licensed and registered. But of course, on the black market, there is no such registry, and of course, they don't want. I mean, there's no incentive. If you're going to commit to criminal act, then there's no reason for you to register firearms. But we take them. Okay, so we also have these regular amnesties.
Mm-hmm.
So about once a year, the police across the nation will have an amnesty and basically say, if you have a gun, if your family member has a gun in the house, and what tends to happen is parents who are concerned that their young sons are getting involved in crime will just drop off the guns at the police stations. There's no questions asked. There's no,
Gotcha.
and you'd be amazed at the hardware that comes in. Just crazy.
Now, for those who don't know, how did they go about essentially getting people to turn in their guns beforehand, utilizing that registration that was already in place? For the people, because a lot of people don't, when I tell people this, they don't believe me, that I was like, UK had gun registration. They had a gun registration, and they subsequently used that registration to get people, to force people to turn in their guns.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So what you have to remember is that England and America are not the same culturally. So we are used to, we've got thousands of years of doing what we're told by someone above us, whether that be a king, a lord, parliament, or whomever. And America is founded on people who didn't like being told what to do. So they went to the new world. So everybody that had a firearm, so particularly with the pistols, for example, everybody that had a pistol legally, had it registered. There was a database who had all the guns, and then there was a particular incident, an active shooter, where it was very, very tragic. And the existing legislation was adequate in order to address the issue, but they didn't want to do that. They had they just said, well, okay, that's it. We're going to ban all the guns.
Gotcha. Sounds kind of like what they try to do in America.
Yeah, so they basically just wrote to all the licensed people and said, you've got 3 months to hand your guns in. And they did, because if you didn't, then you went to prison, and they knew you had the guns, so you couldn't just say, I sold it to a guy. Well, who's the guy you sold it to? Because it's still the guy. Yeah, I mean, it didn't work. So all the legally held handguns, they all got handed in, because you had to. You had that choice. Whereas all the illegally ones
were still there.
They did not. So I always try to explain to people in the UK and over here, you can't do that in America because the genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
The gun, even the legally held firearms, there is no central registry. You can't retroactively encourage people to, all those guns that you have that we don't know you have, or can you just
turn those in? Like, just put them in this box for us, please, pretty please. Yeah, turn in your $4,000 AR that you have. Speaking of ARs, quickly, we got about a minute. We got about a minute and 20 seconds. I want to talk about the idea, the notion of people needing an AR-15. Like, how do you usually deal with that when you talk to the people that who are from the UK and can't understand why we want ARs?
I just talk about basic firearms tactics. So a tenet of firearms tactics is superior numbers, superior training, superior firepower. So if someone's coming into my house and they have a handgun, I want to have a long gun.
Yeah.
If there's two people coming with a handgun, I definitely want to have a long gun.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't want to meet them with a Glock. I want to meet them with an AR.
Yeah.
Because it's just basic tactics, and it's simple and it's logical, and it makes sense if you know anything about tactics. If you don't, I forgive you.
Yeah, I try to make that case to people all of the time. It's hard for some people to comprehend it because they're just not into guns, so they don't know anything about basic tactics and overwhelming firepower, things of that nature. So it's great to have somebody else say exactly what I've been trying to tell these people over and over again, who actually does it and has the expertise to be able to speak on it. But I really, really appreciate your insight. For a lot of people out there, I'm pretty sure they appreciate it too, because we have to deal with this comparison over and over again. It's like having a brother or sister that your mom keeps comparing you to because they're so awesome, right? They keep telling you how awesome they are, and then you're just a failure in life. That's how it kind of feels in a lot of ways. So thank you for being the brother that says, hey, guess what? Mom thinks I'm the greatest person on the planet, but secretly, I'm just as bad as you.
We have exactly the same problems. Yeah. It's just a smaller country.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Paul, and I hope you have a good one.
Well, thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
It's been my pleasure.
You too.
All right.
And we'll be back.